All right, well, hello and welcome to another podcast of the Gospel Rescue Mission. Today we are in the studios talking with our Executive Director Ken Emilio, and we're discussing the issue of the Gospel Rescue Mission smoking policy, the nicotine cessation policy. And I think that what we want to start with is say, Ken, why don't you tell us a little bit about why do we do what we do in the first place? Tell us about what we do and why we do what we do.
Well, the smoking policy is one of those areas, Brian, that, as you know, we get some of the most unusual complaints and things that seem so simple to donors, to residents, to people who look at, why do you do what we do? My first response is typically, when people ask me, why does the mission prohibit smoking? I always ask the question is, smoking what? The problem is in the details. The devil is always in the details.
For sure. You know, we get more heated feedback from people in the community, and oddly enough, as many in the Christian community as outside the Christian community, very, very defensive on this issue. So do me a favor, lay out the problem for our audience. Lay out the problem that we have.
Well, we prohibit a lot of substances and we prohibit a lot of behaviors, but then everybody does. Whether you're a church or whether you're a business, whatever you do, there's certain things that are acceptable and certain things that aren't. And most of the things that are acceptable that you accept in your business or in your home, especially in your home, are based upon the values and the shared needs and safety of those in your home or in your community. And so if we agree that some form of regulation of substances is necessary, then the next question is, what do you regulate? Alcohol, tobacco, pipes, cigars, when and where do you regulate them?
Right. I always think, I'll ask somebody, do you regulate these things in your home? Do you allow your kids to do them in your house? And inevitably they'll say no. And then you go, okay, great. Why? and then they're surprised that but you're not a home. You're not a home. I go, wait a minute. I've got like 100 men and women and children living here. What do you mean I'm not a home?
When you look at the density of the people that live at the mission versus the density of people that live in a typical family home, it's overwhelming when you think in terms of, we've got a lot of people crammed into this building and a couple of buildings, and they have to learn to get along with each other. And how do we set the things that we do? Why do we do the things we do? Well, we have to regulate based on the community as opposed to many times the individual, opposed against the individual. And so the needs of the classic statement, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few,
for sure,
or the one, really do apply here.
Yeah. It's the individual liberties at times in a community. Everybody has to limit their needs, their individual rights that they might have per se, in order to flourish within the community. And that's really true in all of society, right?
It is. We tend to isolate when we're challenged by people in the community about, quote, cigarettes. How do you define that term? If it's legal, do we allow it? Well, do we allow a beer? What's wrong with one beer a day? If I let them go out into the community, have a beer, a glass of wine.
Why not casual sex?
Whatever.
It's legal.
It's legal.
It's legal.
Marijuana is now legal in Oregon.
Right.
So it's how do we decide what's legal? Is it based on the individual's needs, or is it based on the idea of community and how we get along? And from the mission's perspective, it's got to be based on the various people that come here who really want to change, who want to make a difference in their life. We're not just a holding pattern or a holding cell for people. What we really are is we're so much more than the traditional mission as people communicate. The Grants Pass Gospel Rescue Mission is totally unique. Grants Pass City is totally unique. We're not a big city mission. We don't do street homelessness like many of the other organizations do. We have decided, our board and you, Brian, and everyone at the mission has decided we want to help those people who are really ready to make a change in their lives. And that's what we're focusing on.
Yeah, and even when we say it has to do less with the needs of the individual and more with the needs of the group, even when you consider the needs of the individual, you still go, well, is smoking what's best for them? I mean, what do you really want for a homeless guy? Do you want to just make them feel good, or do you really want something better than that? What we're shooting for is something that's so much grander than that. What I want for them is to not be homeless anymore. And I recognize that smoking is just one of those things that plays into their homelessness and how they got here. And that's a big deal.
You mentioned, what would you allow in your home? Well, what about chewing tobacco? What about snuff? What about cigars? What about roll your own? If we get into the issue, if you get into the issue of just roll your own cigarettes, do you have any idea? Have you ever heard of the term lacing?
Oh, yeah.
So I'm asking, and for you, it's a rhetorical question, but I would ask our audience, if you haven't heard the term lacing, you need to think about it. Lacing is the idea that I can take a cigarette, a typical cigarette, or not even mentioning it, roll your own, and lace that cigarette with just about any substance I want.
Sure.
Any liquefied medication, drug, you name it. I can put it in a cigarette and you'd never know it.
You know, it was funny to me the first time I learned that guys would take their, when I first came to the mission, guys would take their prescription opiate pills for pain, and they'd crush them up and take them into the bathroom and try and smoke them.
Yes.
And it never occurred to me that somebody would do that, or the first time I heard that somebody was crushing them and then snorting them. And I was like, why in the world would somebody do that? Well, they're doing it to get high. Yeah. They're doing it to get high, and that means more to them than anything. So, again, what is he smoking? Well, from a distance, I can't tell. And even sometimes from the smell, especially if it's combined with tobacco, I can't tell. So that's pretty challenging.
I think we have to recognize that the mission is a place where people's lives are falling apart. They're desperate. It's not a normal situation. And to put influence or to put stress on them, that things like addictive substances, because I include tobacco into the concept of addictive substances, sure. Those things create a challenge for our residents that you would not normally put anybody under. Why would you put something in front of a heroin addict? Why would you hand a heroin addict medication that he doesn't need, but he sure wants? Why would you do that? One of the key biblical principles that we have is that I will put nothing before my own eyes, but I won't put something to cause a brother or a sister to stumble.
And love your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly.
And so, even if it was, hey, a nutritious sandwich laced with something that will give you cancer, but it's delicious. Here you go. And anybody that, if you knew you were giving it to them that way, they'd go, that's cruel, that's awful, why would you do that? And yet they want to fight for us to allow them to continue smoking. And we just talk about the health issues alone, the health risks alone for them as they continue smoking, when they're trying to come off of their addiction to alcohol or their addiction to whatever else it is. It's to continue smoking is just going to drive their health further into the ground and increase the risks of cardiovascular death and all kinds of other things. And so to me, it's like the evidence is just so overwhelming. Why should they quit? We've known everybody should quit for the longest time, but for some reason we want to defend the homeless guy's right to smoke. Why do you think that is?
Take that health issue.
Yeah.
I think that people are trained to want to feel sorry for help for people.
Yeah.
And that idea of, well, should I give them a rock or should I give them something that's going to help them? That's, again, a biblical term that talks about where your Father loves you. He's going to give you good things.
Right.
He's not going to give you a rock or a snake.
Serpent.
Or a serpent.
Right.
And, that idea of even the health issue is, I've more than once looked at this. When I first came to the mission, I was a volunteer. And like so many of us, we're volunteers. And I was doing chapels. Well, eventually I was asked to be on the board, and then I was asked to be the executive director. And when I first came here, I had a kind of a libertarian background. I was going to, when the previous director had put in place this new smoking policy, you can't even have nicotine in your system. Like he treated it like a drug.
Yeah.
And my first role was, how can he do that? That's cruel. That's unusual. Take away the health issue altogether. Just the idea of managing people, helping them with relationships. The smoking policy has tremendous benefits. Yeah. And so I'm sold on it completely. Think about what you're asking our staff to do. When we had I don't know that you remember, Brian, but I asked the staff to vote on did they want to have cigarettes or not? And do you remember the response?
Yeah. We overwhelming the staff all voted in favor of the smoking cessation. They all recognized that when they start thinking through what does it take to monitor and regulate and everything like that, and thinking about all the ramifications of if we let them smoke. What's it going to mean for me as a person who's charged with care for and guidance of the residents, of making friends with not just the residents but my neighbors who live around the residency of the mission and everything. We realized that, oh man, this is a can of worms that if we were to open that up would just become a nightmare and would make us less productive. It would just simply make the ability to get people free from addictions, get people free from the street, get people free into their own, into own good lives that are wholesome, that are where they're paying their own way in life and everything. That just seemed like if it's related to all of those things.
Everything connects.
Yeah.
It was funny when one of the things I brought up to that day when we were at that meeting a couple of times was, okay, if you're Brian Boteller and you're the men's coordinator and you want the smoking policy, Brian, how many cigarettes are you going to allow them to carry on their person? And how many cigarettes are you going to allow in their lockers? 1 pack? 5 packs? I'm an entrepreneur. And in the economics of smoking cigarettes, I could have 10 cartons. And if you think I'm exaggerating, you should get into the street concept of what it means to own, buy, and sell cigarettes. You got some.
Well, in fact, we have a policy here, an additional policy here at the mission, that the residents are not allowed to buy, sell, trade, give away anything to one another. And for the very reason that you're getting at is that once somebody becomes indebted to somebody else, when you don't pay up in your time, we're going to send Guido to break your legs.
Great
kind of thing. Exactly.
Tool.
Suddenly, violence is justified. Suddenly, all these things, and so all of the rules that we have at the mission really have come as a result of bad experiences of things going the other way, and that's certainly true with the no buying, selling, and trading amongst one another. And if there's tobacco, guaranteed it would become the currency. It'd become the Bitcoin of the mission.
Yeah, sure. I like the term Bitcoin. If you think in terms of some people, I chuckle with some folks that come up and say, what do you mean by the economics of the street? Street Economics 101 is what my wife has been writing about. But one of the big issues was if I'm a street person and I want to make a fast $20, how do I do it? Well, it's real simple. I go and I pay $5 for a pack of cigarettes, a pack of 20. And then I turn around and sell them as loosies, what are called loosies, for $1 or $2 a piece.
Yeah.
I can make $20 to $30 in a day.
Yep.
And that's extra. And then if I sell by multiple packs, they'll come to me to buy $1 a cigarette.
Right.
But it's interesting. Drugstores and liquor stores and convenience stores used to sell loosies.
That's right.
It was a program that they would buy and sell for $1 a piece. You could go in, crack a pack of cigarettes, and just sell $1. That practice, quite frankly, is illegal now in Oregon.
Yeah.
They passed a law on it.
That's funny. It plays into really the poverty of the homeless person to begin with. They don't recognize and they don't manage their money well. They don't recognize that how much tobacco costs, to spend $5 or even $1 for a cigarette at any one point in time. It seems it seems insignificant in the moment because it's only $1. Well, at the end of the day, if you smoked a pack, you've smoked $20 worth of individuals, or a $5, but $5 a day for a month, that's $150. And so you start wondering, how are these guys staying poor and staying out on the street? Well, they can't manage their money. And for me, I don't have a problem with smoking per se. I don't find it to be a sin. Right. I don't think that it's something that's if somebody's got the luxury, the money to spend on luxury items, they should be able to, as long as it's not doing it to the detriment of something else. But 1 Timothy 5:8 says, if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially for a member of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. Paul says it in 2 Thessalonians. He says, it was not because we don't have the right, but because to give you and in ourselves an example, for even when we were with you, we would give you this command: if anyone is not willing to work, let him not eat. For we hear that some among you walk in idleness, not busy at work, but as busybodies. And again, I see that's what we see on the streets. That's what I see is this kind of idleness that just sits there. They can't find their way out of this position, and they have no idea that they're trapped in it in part because of the poverty that's brought on by smoking.
But Brian, you're so cruel. Right. When you think about it in terms of saying you're denying someone who's been addicted to drugs. Right. They're giving up everything to come stay at the mission. You're putting something that's very hard to do for them to do. How can you do that? And so do you let me ask the question in this terms.
Yeah.
Does the mission provide anything? And I'm asking the leading question.
Yeah.
But does the mission provide anything in terms of help for them quitting? And this is something that I'd like you to talk about, because people don't realize just what the mission, how far the mission will go to help people. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, one of the things that we've done, and we did this at the beginning as we began to, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when we were really challenging this policy in and of ourselves, we began to work with the folks at All Care and asking them.
All Care is what?
So All Care is a local. It's a local, what they call them, a CCO. It's an insurance company.
It's like a health organization.
It's a health organization, and they provide most of the tobacco cessation programs for the medical community in Southern Oregon. So if you're a doctor or a nurse trying to quit at the hospital, then you're going to deal with probably an All Care professional who's going to provide you support and encouragement and give you the tools that you need to do so. They looked at our cessation program, and they were the ones that we kept going back and forth going, hey, you tell us what we need to change, what we need to fix. They would look at it and go, okay, you should do it this way. And we'd go, okay, well, what about if we write it like this? And then they'd come back and go, yeah, that's fantastic. So the things that they've asked us to do is provide a couple of a nicotine replacement therapy and a couple other options besides just a cold turkey quit.
And this is under medical supervision.
And this is, well, it is and it isn't under medical supervision. It is in the sense that you would go to your primary care physician and get a prescription for these things. So it's definitely supervised that way. The administration of it is something that each one does as an individual. But so what we've done is said, okay, you have 4 options, one of 4 options to quit smoking. You can quit by cold turkey if you'd like, but we also right out of the gate encourage those who are not all that courageous at trying to take a cold turkey quit to try a couple other options. The number one that we see is the patch, the use of the nicotine patch. And what we found is that, okay, the Oregon Health Plan will cover nicotine cessation, and will cover that through the use of the patch. They'll cover a prescription, but we all know it takes sometimes a week or so to get to see your doctor and get a prescription. So what we've done is, as a mission, is we've said, okay, we will get patches, and we will provide them at our expense, provided that they sign a waiver release of liability.
So you're saying that the mission actually will buy patches for them free of charge,
and does so frequently.
Yes.
Yeah, we do this often, and then we also offer two other by prescription only options. Either they can use Wellbutrin, which has been a well-known, it's an antidepressant, but it's used often for nicotine cessation. It's pretty successful. And of course the use of Chantix. And Chantix also, again, as long as it's under the supervision of their doctor, we're okay with that as well. Very few will use those two options. Most will either use the patch or just quit cold turkey. And even those who start on the patch, very few of them actually stay on the patch long. What we find is that as long as they're going to the nicotine cessation classes that we provide every week as well, that All Care comes in and sends a representative in to do
so we don't forbid someone from staying at the mission if they're smokers.
Right. No, in fact, we would encourage them to come here because, hey, what a great opportunity to quit. I was raised by parents who smoke. I know, I've got dozens of friends that smoke, and I've listened to them over and over again tell me how they would quit if they had the help. And I just tell them, well, all you got to do is become homeless and come down to the mission.
How much time do you normally give someone to quit?
So the quitting of smoking depends on the cessation program that they choose. Generally, what we'll do if they require if they ask for a nicotine replacement, we ask them quit smoking right away, but we'll get you the patch right away, so that you'll still have nicotine in your system. But then we give them 8 weeks to come off of that, and
8 weeks?
to become nicotine free,
Oh,
right? And then with Chantix and with Wellbutrin, they're a little different. But again, we give them a solid week that they can continue smoking while they're working through their process, because it takes their first week they still smoke during their time that they're on the Chantix anyways, and then after that they've got another week to kind of do some hit and miss, and then after that they're done, and so 12 days, 14 days, and then they're done and free to go, and we see. Really, the cool thing is at least 80% of the people
that was my next question. You're actually the mission we're running up to 80% success rate.
I would even say, I would guess it's even higher than that, at least during their stay here. Now, people might argue, well, yeah, but they go back out and do it after they leave, after they check out of the mission, and they may do a lot of things after they leave the mission that they can't do while they're here at the mission, and that's fine. I mean, they can sleep in past 5:30 in the morning when they leave the mission, because it's not a sin. Again, I'm not trying to get them to quit sinning or anything like that. I mean, we are trying to get them to quit sinning as well. But I'm not seeing this as a sin issue. What I'm saying is that I'm giving them the opportunity to heal. I'm giving them the opportunity to change their budget and change their lifestyle. And a lot of them actually, after they leave, one of the reasons they go back to it is because now they have money for luxury items, because they've become a productive member of society again. They've got a job, they've got savings, they can afford their rent, all those kinds of things. And so then if they decide they want to smoke, well then they can, and that's okay. And not all of them do. Plenty of them still don't, after they leave.
I think one of the biggest takeaways that I think both Brian and I want to give our audience is that the mission is about helping to bring people to a place in their lives where they start to have some control, and where they get rest here, and that they learn how to form healthy, productive relationships. And all too often, substance abuse and addictive substances get in the way of that.
Right.
How they use it, how they interact with it. We find that people who tend to smoke in a situation like this tend to form cliques. You walk into the mission and watch, or a group of people, how do they mix? How do they interact? Smoking, I'm not trying to say smoking, I'm with you, Brian. I'm not saying that smoking itself is a sin. But if I go to a local drug rehab place, you're going to see a crowd of people smoking. And within that group, other things take place.
You know, what's funny is statistically, so only about 20% of the American population smokes today in the United States. And an interesting thing is that among those who have mental health issues in the mental health community, 95% of that community smokes. One of the things that I like to say here at the mission, and I didn't come up with it, but I sure like the statement, is that people run out of relationship long before they run out of money, and that's how they ended here. So when we look at smoking and say, what is it doing? What is it serving? Well, it's serving this relational inadequacy that I have, this thing that I need to learn something new that I don't know. And so smoking has served as that purpose for a lot of these guys. We're trying to get them to bridge into this new area where they can learn good relational skills without chemical dependency. I mean, in the end, we've established, that tobacco use among impoverished people it's bad financial practice. It keeps them in poverty. We know that there's overwhelming evidence on how tobacco use is devastating to a person's health, particularly when they're recovering from other damaging addictions. We discovered that tobacco cessation can actually assist with the recovery from other addictions when done simultaneously. In fact, there's about a 25% higher chance of a person who's dealing with other addictions recovering from those as well when they quit smoking at the same time. So it actually increases their success rate from those things. And so when we look at all of those things, we recognize that placing a temptation like tobacco use in front of somebody who's struggling with other life-threatening addictions, it's unkind, it's unloving, and so therefore it's against the Word of God.
It's basically focusing on the bad, focusing on the negative,
right?
And the idea of, and when I say bad, I mean bad habits, bad behavior. That concept that we learn in Philippians 4, for example, it reads, "Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable. If there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Practice these things. And what you have learned and received and seen in me, practice these things, and the peace of God will be with you." That what we're looking for here is to get stability. The mission is all about helping people who are in a crazy situation on the streets or a crazy situation at their homes, and get some peace, get some stability, so that you can build yourself up physically, mentally, spiritually, to be able to get back out into the community and be an active member of society.
That's
and
right.
The toughest place to quit addictive substances is right here at the Gospel Rescue Mission, because this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
You and your staff put a tremendous amount of rules, if you will, but what they really are, they're guidelines for good behavior based in the biblical concept of loving God and then loving your fellow brothers.
That's right. The toughest place is out on the streets. The toughest place to quit anything is when they're out on the streets. So here, the real question is to the person who would ask, why would we have this smoking cessation policy? The real question is, why wouldn't we? What is it that you really want for a homeless person? Do you want what's best for them? Let's love our neighbors as ourselves. If that sounds good to you, I think that's a wrap for what we've got today. I'd thank everybody for listening, and I would encourage you to do a couple of things. First, share this podcast with your friends. Encourage others to come check out our website. It is gospelrescuemissiongp.org or grantspastmission.org. Also, I would encourage you to like us and friend us on Facebook. Just send that out there. Let people know that we're here and what we're about. And again, thank you, and may God bless your day.